Thank you, and I think I'm pretty much an ordinary guy as well, eh? And sort of today's session, really want it to be very interactive. So that's why we're set up in groups, and we'll sort of I'll do a little bit of talking, but I want to hear a lot from you guys as the participants around your experience with change and the way that you've seen businesses and organisations you've worked in go through change initiatives and share with the group some of those experiences. Let me just make sure I can get this to work. So there you go. So that's basically what the objectives of today are, is to share our experiences, review some change models. So I've got Cotter's 8 Steps of Change, which you may be familiar with. I think it's like a 25-year-old model, but it's still being used very widely today. And also I'll go through an adaptation of that I use myself in developing and implementing change strategies. We'll talk about how we create successful change, and I think I sent out 2 readings, and the readings were tailored around why change efforts fail, and one of the readings was sort of tailored around that potentially the Cotter's model is outdated, right? And that's sort of like deliberate. I have a view that it's possibly not, but that's just my view. So it's wise to share views of others, so that that's how we learn. We learn from the experience of others as well as our own experiences. I've got a couple of case studies, so hopefully we'll get 4 groups, or we might mingle into 3. But I've got 2 real life case studies. One is a case study that was not successful, and one is a case study that was successful. And I think it's important to talk about things that we do that are successful, but also I believe it's important to talk about things that we do that aren't so successful, so that we can learn from them ourselves, but share those learnings with others, so that they too can learn from your experience. And then we'll have some discussion and then drinks at the end. So hopefully it won't go too long. But a bit about my background, and I think Tegan did a good introduction, but a little bit about my background, and I'll sort of share with you some of my own personal experiences, my own personal change. And this is sort of a little bit about, so you get to know a little bit about me, and then hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable to share some of your own experiences as well. So I grew up in Penrith. I'm sure most of you know where Penrith is, Western Sydney. Pretty sort of rough neighbourhood. So I either had to learn how to fight or run. So that's sort of that's how I grew up. And I know I wasn't really that successful at school. It was an environment that I didn't like, and I probably got a pretty ordinary result in my HSC. And I spent my first I got an apprenticeship, but first spent my first part of work sort of just going out, having fun, getting drunk with mates, racing cars, all that sort of stuff. But I think it was probably about the end of my first year of working, a light switched on in my head, and thought, well, there's more to life than just going to work and getting drunk on weekends and racing cars, right? So I sort of started to study. Whilst I was doing my apprenticeship, I started a mechanical engineering degree at uni, and by the time I was a 4th year apprentice, I was a cadet engineer working in the engineering office. And then probably a year out of my apprenticeship, I was a senior engineer in the engineering department, and this was within Freight Corp. And I think by the time I was 25, I was the maintenance manager for Pacific National, looking after about 300 locomotives, $80 million budget, and about 150 staff. And I think I was 31 when I was a general manager running a major electrical contracting company within New South Wales, and then moved into running Engenicom, which was a fairly successful engineering project management consulting business, and spent the last 5 years working for myself, helping businesses drive change and implement ways of doing things differently. And by differently, the objective is to be better. So that's a little bit about my experience. And I want to share with you a change experience that very early on in my career, and as I can share the organisation. So it was with Pacific National, and my role in the maintenance management part, this was around 2002, was to transition the business from a government-run organisation into a privately run organisation, lean, like a lean, mean machine that was about delivering to customers and maximising shareholder value. So fundamentally different to what a government organisation's goals and motives are. And part of that, and I think it was good having the background and experiences to working in the field and on the ground, is to understand how that part of the business functioned. And one of the first change initiatives that I worked on was, we give you a bit of background with the way that the maintenance team functioned then. So there was a fair amount of non-trade, so about 30% of the staff were non-trade staff, and their role was predominantly cleaning the workshops, and cleaning locomotives and before the maintainers worked on them. So we had a look at how do we actually rationalise the way that we do maintenance, how do we drive cost out of the business, and how do we eliminate waste. And to give you a real example, a locomotive would come into the workshop, the non-trades guys would wash the locomotive, clean it, whilst the maintainers would sit around potentially for 4 hours just waiting for the kit to be cleaned before they'd started work on it. So straight away you could see that if we've got skilled people waiting around not doing anything, well then potentially they could do that task, and we can sort of minimise the number of people working in the field. So we embarked on that change journey, and it was quite successful. I think we reduced we reduced the cost significantly. We didn't impact on the utilisation, the availability and the reliability of the assets, which is important. And we sort of implemented the change with very minimal union disruption, very minimal industrial disruption. Although I do recall meeting the local member up in Tamworth, having concerns about the changes that were being embarked on. But the thing that I recall most, and there was a guy, and we'll call the guy Bill, just to, I'm not sure, I doubt that anybody will know him, but we'll refer to this gentleman as Bill. And I remember, talking to the team about implementing the change, and this incident occurred in Werris Creek, where one of the guys, he was 55, worked for the organisation, so it was State Rail or what it might have been New South Wales Government Railways back when he started when he was 14. So he'd be working there, going to the same site every day. I don't do the math, but it's sort of like 40 years going to the same site every day. And when he was one of the gentlemen that actually lost his role. He was a non-trades guy, and he sort of lost his position and was made redundant. I got a phone call on Friday afternoon. Would have been about 3 o'clock Friday, saying that Bill had an episode on site, and had potentially injured himself and was taken to Tamworth Hospital. So Friday afternoon, got in the car, drove to Tamworth. And I thought, what do you get a guy? You can't buy a guy flowers. So I got him a box of fruit. Took a box of fruit to the hospital. He seen me walk in there, and probably, well, it's fair to say he wasn't pleased to see me. I'm the bad guy that's caused this change, caused a significant impact to his life. But I sat down and I spoke to him, and then I got to understand what I'd actually done to Bill as a person. So he'd as I said, 55, started when he was 14, lived at home with his mum, and sort of lived a life that was, go to work every day, come home, talk to mum, cook mum dinner, and then go to bed and come back and do it again. So, and his mum was obviously getting old and somewhat unwell as well. So all that change in his life at that time, caused him to get very anxious. He was also on medication to keep his anxiety under control, and he made a decision to stop taking his medication. Hence the episode on that Friday afternoon. And to me, a pretty dramatic story. And the reason why I'm sort of telling this story is to sort of help put into perspective that the change that we do. So at the beginning, I spoke about results, right? So costs were reduced, staff numbers were reduced. There was no impact to, availability and reliability of the assets. The business kept running, right? But Bill was significantly impacted by that change. And to me, a light switched on in my head, and I thought, there is what we do in our work, there is a significant impact on people, and we need to understand that so that when we're implementing something that has a potentially significant impact, we can tailor it in a way to minimise the impact, understand the impact, and do it in a way that still gets the results, but helps us to minimise the impact that change has on people. That's why I tell that story. And it was two years later, in the same role, I managed the outsourcing of all of the locomotive maintenance within Pacific National. So where previously I think there was about 20 positions that were made redundant, in this case there was 100 positions made redundant on the 14th of December. So these things always happen at a bad time of year. But the difference and the learning that I took from the experience with Bill, the difference is that I actually met with every employee, so all 100 employees. I met with them one-on-one, and many of them more than once. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to understand that, their personal circumstances, understand what they were going through this change, and help them where I could, and particularly help those that wanted to have the help, because there will be some people that won't, no matter what you do, won't be willing to take the help. And again, that was a significant change. And again, if we look at the measures of success, there was no Bill examples in that change. There was to me a very good maintaining of relationships with the team going through the change, and one of the measures, and it sounds like difficult sometimes to put people's feelings, etc., into statistics. But if you look at one of the measures of success when you're going through change that has a significant impact on people, it's sick leave. So if you look at sick leave, typically in this part of the business was sitting around 3%. Industry average is probably just a little bit over that. And typically when you go through change, you can see sick leave will increase. So as people know that they're about to, lose their jobs, they've got, potential like 40 years of sick leave being accumulated. Like that's a lot of sick leave. So people will tend to actually, take sick leave, use that up as a sense of entitlement and a way of, them working through the change themselves. Sick leave, through this 3-month significant change process, sick leave went up by 0.2%. So to me, that's a measure of how the team continued to be engaged through that change. And part of the main success around that was a lot of communication and a lot of demonstrating the business case. Why? So when things are changed, because we all, I think it's fair to say we all, can't say that we like all changes that we've experienced, but often if you know why, and if you know what the benefit will be to the business and to you and the outcome, you're able to get a better acceptance as to why that change is happening. So and to me that was the the driver of the success of that change. So what I'll just check this next slide now. So yeah, right, we'll just go back a sec. So what I'd like to do now is I've sort of shared with you some of my experience, and I'll continue to do that through the next, 2-hour session. But what I'd like you to do now is just in your tables, or even if you, so the tables are quite long, if you split up into, groups of 4 or 5, and just talk to yourself about a change experience that you have had, that has a significant impact on you. And that could be at work, it could be at home, it could be anything you like. And then I wouldn't mind, as a group, if you could choose, 1 or 2 to share with the rest of the team. So I know what, 5 minutes? Yep, away we go. But we'll start over here. So John, I guess that you're gonna share an experience with us. So excuse me, everyone, if we can just give the floor to John for a moment.
I guess I contrasted, I spent virtually most of my career in the rail industry, and I was contrasting 2 major restructures with my 2 major employers. One basically came in with, I will say, little warning, but as we were just discussing, as being a manufacturer, you can see your projects drawing up, everybody knows the axe is coming, the question is when. The actual axe itself sort of tends to fall on one day with no actual warning that day's the day. The bullets are fired, as we used to say, they're marched off site that day, it's done back to business sort of thing. Compared with a really significant restructure 2 years ago at PN, when they put what was virtually 2 businesses back into one. So there was particularly in the maintenance area, there was a significant loss of jobs, but it was done very much on the front foot with a timeline, with communication, with a lot of engagement. We knew it weeks in advance roughly when the day was going to be, so while that led to a degree of stress and a loss of productivity, I think it was probably better than the EGL model, just because while, the one day was nice and clean, I think from a business point of view, the productivity losses and everything else that sat either side of the one day were probably a lot larger, just because, as I said, the guys, and they've continued to work that way over the last few years, and even though as their workload increases and decreases, keeping in contact with some of my colleagues there, it's also, when's the next round of cuts? We're guessing probably around here, and everybody knows it's coming, but it's not openly discussed, and I think that has a big impact.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good share. Thanks, mate. Example of a positive change that had a lot of positive impact on people, and more people being, engaged to do work. One of the things I've worked on in the last couple of years is helping a business that wasn't as successful as it wanted to be in winning work. So I worked with them to help them build their bid management capability, their work winning capability, and sort of worked on, a lot of it was around systems, processes, and getting the teams to sort of, put themselves in the customer's shoes and understand, what does the customer want? Why are they asking us, to respond to this tender in this way? And really change their thinking about how they approach the tender, and how they actually develop a solution that focuses on, what the customer wants more, not just what the contractor, how much money can I make out of it, what's my EBIT going to be, all that sort of stuff, So it was fairly significant, and what we were able to demonstrate is that if there was, investment in people, and if there was investment with the right processes and tools, that you could actually get a really good, get a good, work winning machine established that was able to work with the business units who had the expertise to go out and win work, and their win rates, increased by about 25%, just by implementing that process, and as a result, they won more work, more people were employed. The bid management team got stronger, and there was more people. There was investment in new systems and processes to simplify the way that they went about doing their work. So there are change examples that don't always relate into staff reductions. They also can relate into investments in new technology, new systems, investment in upskilling people, and the creation of jobs. So there is positive elements out there to managing change, and positive reasons why we do it, not just about bottom line. So what I want to do now is share with you Cotter's model. I've got a couple of printouts here. But this model has been out for a long time, and there is a company called Cotter's International, which is obviously owned by Cotter and works with him, that has revitalised the model for today's world. But the process is still pretty much the same. So if we just sort of talk through the steps, and as I said, this is a widely used model. But the first step that Cotter says is around establishing a sense of urgency. So examining the market, identifying what is the crisis, what is the issue that we have, why do we need to address this thing that's happening, why do we need to change, and what is the impact if we don't change? So what are the opportunities, but what are the impacts? So it's creating that sense of urgency. And then the other thing Cotter says is to form a guiding coalition. So, assemble a group of people with enough power that can lead the change effort. And then encouraging, the group to work together as a team. So often it's about pulling people with different expertise together, maybe from different departments, to drive the change initiative. And then the other one, number 3, is creating the vision. So what, after this change, what are we going to look like? So it's establishing the vision so people can see we're going through all this effort. What are we going to be when we've completed the change journey? And number 4 is about communicating the vision. So this is, using every vehicle possible. And a lot of the examples that we spoke about today, and I think resounding was the more communication you had, the more warning. Although you may not have liked what was being told, you actually communicated. You felt that you were being treated as a person, and you were being made aware of what was going on. So the more that you can communicate. So one is communicate the whole lot. So important to me is communicating the change. So you've created the sense of urgency already. So why are we changing? What have we got to do it quickly for? What's the vision? What are we going to look like at the end? And the whiff and what's in it for me. So what's in it for the individual that you're communicating, or the teams that you're communicating to about the change? And then empowering others to act on the vision. So it's, if you've got a guiding coalition or a team, it's empowering and building the ability for people in that team to actually, make decisions and impact on the change. And I guess my examples there is that sometimes if you have a view that this is the vision and this is the path I want to go down, and you've got a team and you've got a team that you want to engage to go on that journey with you, if they come up with an idea, that's great, adopt it, yep. If they come up with an idea that's good or okay, and it might not be the way that you would like to go, but if it's still going to get you on that path and get you to that vision, it's a good idea to adopt it, because that's how you get engagement from people. You're actually empowering them, and they actually will see, well, hey, this guy, well, he's changed the approach based on my feedback. He's listening. He understands what I'm saying, and he's adapting the change plan based on my knowledge. So you feel valued if that happens to you. So you feel valued. You feel as though your contribution is contributing to, or your thoughts are contributing to the success, and you're empowered to actually implement the change. And then it's short-term wins is key, and this is around planning for. So know what the short-term wins are. So have in your mind what are the key milestones that you're going to measure your own success on and be proud about, and the team's success. and then it's about communicating those short wins. So pick some goals along the journey to that vision that you can actually celebrate, and celebrate with the team, celebrate with those around, and communicate. So communicate those wins so that the wider team, the wider business can actually see that the change journey is creating value. And the other is consolidating improvements, because one of the key challenges is that we change something and then go, great, that's done, and then we just move on and we forget, and then we look back later and go, well, actually that change wasn't implemented. It was a great idea, we did it once, but we didn't do it again. So it's about consolidating what we've done and consolidating the changes so that they're embedded, and then once they're embedded, don't just let them sit there. Actually continue to work out how you can improve and continue to drive further change. And 8, sort of I flowed a little bit into 8 there, which is institutionalising the change, so that once it's embedded in place, it becomes the norm. And then you challenge it again and go through the whole cycle. And that's the world. And I think we hear lots, change is the only constant. And I think we can see that. And I was talking to, I'm trying to think of who it was, but we had a session, within HunterNet a couple of days ago, where we spoke about the Kodak story. And I wasn't familiar with the Kodak story, but it was about, when did Kodak die? Was it in 1974? Was it in 1998 when it started to get in financial trouble? Or was it in 2001 when it actually died? Right, and the theory there was, well, in 1974, that's when the first digital camera was invented. In 2001, that's when sales of film-related products plummeted, and Kodak wasn't prepared for a new emerging market, and 3 years of losses. In 2001, it folded. So if you look at that, the ability of Kodak to foresee changing dynamics in the market and change, that they were unable to do that. And if you relate that to today, and this is about things are always changing, but when are we going to have autonomous cars? Right, and so if you think about autonomous cars, I know my area, you think about the Jetsons, right, when they're in the space and driving around, right? So, but if you think autonomous cars and you think, well, are we mad? Are we really going to have autonomous cars? But I think it's about that vision and the vision about, will we get there? And I reckon one day we will. Like not that I want to bag Fords, but I'd drive a Ford that has a adaptive cruise control, has what's it called, lane departure, keeps me in the lane, and if I wanted to, I could just drive on the freeway and have my hand off the steering wheels, and it will stop if there's a car in front, and if I veer off the lane, it'll take me back into, or keep me within the lane. So that's for a Ford, right? So if Ford can do it, right, how far away are we from actually having an autonomous car? And I reckon my view is we're not far. So with that evolution of change and the vision about how we get there, the organisations that are able to change and start thinking ahead of the game are the ones that will get there first. That's just a bit of my own views I'm sharing there, but I'm sure you can see where I'm coming from. So we look at why change is implemented. So as I mentioned, Cotter International has been established, and they looked at organisations. They studied a whole heap of organisations between 2008 and 2014, and they wanted to understand what are the main reasons why organisations embark on change. And they identified that there are two main reasons. The first one being to increase revenues, profits, or decrease their costs. The other one is to become more effective or more efficient, and sometimes both. So these are real organisations in very recent times as to why they implement change. So if you think about your organisation now, so what is it about your organisation you know, that with change that it's implemented or change maybe that you think it should implement. So, you know, is it falling behind the competition today? Is it ill prepared to compete into the future? No, is it too slow to execute? Or conversely, is it too quick to execute but slow to think, to strategise, to plan? So where on the curve, you know, is your organisation in terms of that future thinking? Too slow to innovate, too slow or too ineffective to integrate with mergers and acquisitions. So a lot. I know I've worked with a number of organisations with mergers and acquisitions where companies have been bolted on, and although it looked really good and it was very promising, just the way that they're bolted on and not effectively integrated to the organisation, you know, has sometimes killed that organisation. And is a business too solo? So who's worked in a business where the structures are very siloed and you've got, you know, divisions, and the divisions will do what they want regardless of what the corporate body is trying to implement or what the other division has done. Who cares if they've got a good idea? Our idea is better. We're not listening. So, you know, I'm not sure. I've worked in a couple of organisations that have thought like that. So I'm sure, but maybe again, I'm doing a lot of talking, and I want to make sure that this is pretty interactive session. So I wouldn't mind, again, just in groups, just think about the organisation that you currently work for now, if you feel comfortable talking about that, or one you've previously worked for, and just think, you know, where are they at now, and what, you know, why would your organisation embark on a change journey? You know, what's happening in there that would instigate them, you know, to implement a change, and it'd be good just to share with the group where we're at. So if we do that, another 5 minutes. Why don't we start with you guys? You guys look like you're most ready. What do you reckon? Right, so if we just put our attention over here for a moment, and we'll just do a share. So if you sort of share with us, you know, just one example of what you're speaking about as to why an organisation you have experience with should change.
So the change that my organisation's gone through.
Yep.
Langer Rock, so we're up for sale at the minute. The Australia hub's up for sale. So obviously it's a privately owned company. Langer Rock's over in Europe. I don't think the European hub did very well last year. So obviously there's a lot of economic growth in Europe at the minute. So he's looking to sell the Australia hub, which has been profitable since he started it, to fund his Europe endeavours.
Yep.
So we're still in the balance, still don't know what's going on.
Still in the balance, so you don't know who your new owner is, what's happening, and what's their. So why are they implementing change so they can get money to invest in Europe?
Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much. But you'd imagine Langer Rock would be a relatively attractive business for someone to buy.
You would think so.
Yep. It's just what value do they want to pay?
Yes.
Probably.
I think that's the big problem.
Yep. And today's market, there's not a lot of money around.
No.
Yep. Very good. So you know, some common impacts. So if we reflect on the discussion that we've just had now, so you know, there's and reflecting on your own experiences with change, there's very, you know, is there 5 pretty much common impacts of change there, which we've all spoken about. So, you know, it's engagement. So are people engaged within the business? Do they care? You know, do they really care what the outcome is? You know, and you know, are they engaged? And you know, are your leaders engaged in the change as well, or are they just going through the motion? So there's some of the impacts that you know, business have experienced. You know, the whirlwind. You know, this is a classic. I'm not sure if you've heard of the whirlwind term, but I'll refer to the whirlwind as, you know, that's your day-to-day. So you've got this whirlwind of activity that you've just got to do to keep your operation, your department and your tasks going, and you just get consumed in that. And some people actually like being consumed in that. So if they're consumed in this very, very busy work environment and they don't have to look externally, they're just focusing on what they've got to do today, as opposed to sort of looking out of the wind and going, what am I going to do tomorrow and the day after? Where am I going to head? Where is the business going to head? So it's about getting out of that day to day. and complacency as well, which your Bohemia, isn't it? Yep, yeah. So that's an absolute contrast, right? They weren't complacent. There are businesses out there that get recognise that how they got there is how they're going to get there, but it's not. That was good yesterday. What about tomorrow? And actually responding quickly and adapting and developing new things. And then lopsided, and we'll talk about leadership and change management, but is the change actually all focused on management? So is it just focused on the numbers, the stats, and the project plan to get to the end? And solo, this is a classic that's come up today as well around. Does the business, does the whole business get it? Are there divisions within the businesses that don't get it? And I want to share with you a video now. So this is, I think, a 3 or 4 minute video. It is a cartoon, but it does have a lot of relevance around change. And I'll say up front, there's a little bit of a reference to mermaids, which I don't think really sort of, it probably is the best example. But if you put it into context around, what is it? This is about what actually are the personal motivators for people to embark on a change journey and do things different. So it's worth having a look at this video, which it worked earlier. So we'll see if it works now.
No one will listen. Hey Martin, what's wrong?
Enough of this. Every change I suggested is knocked down. It's impossible to change anything around here.
And maybe your suggestions are no good?
That's nonsense. You know why it happens. Everybody knows. It's because people resist change. Resist.
You are wrong. I don't resist change, and neither does the average Joe. Everyone has pushed for major changes in his or her life. Many young people leave their home, choose to get married, prefer children, and show me somebody who resists the change of a promotion at work.
Can you really fool yourself that you don't resist change?
I resist only the changes that I have a good reason to resist. The others I accept.
Baloney!
Try me.
Okay, I'm game. Making a change is like climbing a mountain. Here's one.
Climb it. Don't think so.
Haha, you see? You do resist change.
I don't resist change. I resist this particular change because I don't have a reason to climb the mountain. I don't see the plus in the change.
Well, what's a good reason for you?
A higher salary, better health, or an improved relationship.
Okay, I'll take care of your excuse. There's a pot of gold waiting for you up there. Is that good enough? Now will you climb?
Nope.
Point proven! You most certainly resist change.
Of course I resist this change, and with good reason. See for yourself. Too much effort, too much time, too high a risk. It's perfectly logical. The minus of the change outweighs the plus of the change.
Another excuse. Fine, I'll reduce the required efforts and the risk. Now are you willing to climb?
I don't think so.
Aha! I knew it! Excuse after excuse. You remove one, another one pops up. The end result is still the same. The change is definitely good for you, and yet you still resist.
But it's not good for me. I don't want the change because I'm comfortable in my current situation.
Another excuse.
Not at all. You look at it too narrowly. No wonder people reject your suggestions.
What? I looked at both the plus and the minus sides of making the change.
Yes, but you've ignored the pluses of not changing. I like my profession. I like the city I'm in. I like my style of living. I like my mermaid. But she cannot climb the mountain with me.
You've just proved my point. Maybe you justified it logically, but at the end of the day, people will always resist change. They can simply declare that they have a mermaid, and there goes any chance of causing a change out the window.
I'm not looking for excuses, but unlike you, I'm not in love with your suggested change. I'm more objective.
Oh, so you're Mr. Objectivity, huh? The guy who only looks at the plus side of staying the same? Aren't there minuses as well?
I guess there are.
Think of situations that if things stay as they are, alligators will bite your ass off. Your firm may go bankrupt, or your spouse may ask for a divorce, or your health will decline drastically. Aren't you fighting alligators?
Constantly.
Sometimes I feel that the people I try to convince are so busy fighting off the alligators that they should be climbing the mountain, even if there is no pot of gold waiting at the top. Still, everybody resists change, including you.
Not at all. Show me how the pot is large enough for me, and the teeth of my alligator are sharp enough, and my effort and my risk to change is not as big, and that I don't have to give up on a beautiful mermaid, then I assure you I will climb the mountain.
That's what I do, and it doesn't work.
Really? Have you ever tried to present all four sides of your suggestion? Let me ask you a more pertinent question. Did you figure out in advance what the pot is for the person you're trying to convince? Not your pot, but his or her pot. What is his or her crutch? What are the alligators and the mermaids for the other party?
I guess not.
There you go. Also, when you concentrate on one aspect and the other person concentrates on another, you are bound to miscommunicate.
Looking at all four factors and doing it from the other party's perspective sounds like a lot of preparation. Are you sure it'll pay off?
Not if you believe that people are programmed to resist change, or any change.
I guess I'll never know unless I give it a try. I'll let you know how it went. But Paul, I see how it might work for convincing an individual, but it won't work when trying to introduce a full-scale organizational change, where the collaboration of so many people is needed.
Yes, it will, as long as you recognize that for different individuals, each of the four elements might be vastly different. A lot more work, but who said that changing an organization is easy?
So a bit of an interesting video, right? I think it sort of reflects a lot on what we've spoken about today. It's a bit I know, a bit primitive maybe in the graphics or whatever, but I think it's a good example of how we go about change. So all of the elements in the communication as to, what is the benefit, what is the impact of doing the change, what is the impact if we don't change. So there's just, considering that and considering that if we're implementing change to a wide part of the business or the whole business, that there's a significant engagement effort required to actually get everybody on board and partaking in the journey. So if you look, and part of this, right, a very, very strong element of this is around leadership. So we've got, what's the difference between managing change and leading change? So if you look at the definitions around management, so that's around, planning, organising, putting the budget in place, solving some problems, measuring it, do we know what we've got to do, being dependable. And then leadership, right, is the different element of change. So it's actually establishing the direction and providing the vision for people to change. It's actually motivating people and inspiring people to be part of it. It's mobilising the team, mobilising the people to actually go on the change journey, and it's propelling into the future. So it's being that that visionary looking forward. So if we're embarking on a change journey and we focus purely on the management, right, we won't be successful. It's about focusing on the leadership and how you get engagement and take people with you on that change. So I know about whether I think we're just in terms of time, we might just skip this part, but there was some readings that I sent out, so we might come back to that at the end, because I'm just mindful that where we are with time. And I want to share with you tools that I've created myself, which is an adaptation of Cotter's model, around developing and implementing change. So I've got a few here that I'll hand out as well. The first element here is identifying the need to change. So why does the business, why does the department need to change what they're doing now? Right? And then it's building the business case. So what is the benefit of that change? And establishing the urgency. So highlighting the risks, detailing the impact, and spelling out the sell. So the with and what's in it for me. Why should the business change? And then it's gain support. So building a guiding coalition. And I spoke around strategies about engaging the teams earlier. And it's developing the implementation plan. So have a plan. So we've got the vision, of why, creating the vision of why we want to change, where we want to get to, and it's building the plan that will get us to that point as well. And then communicating. So communicate. That's most important, that we communicate change. Providing the details for the change, and my own personal view is to be honest. So people will rather hear bad news than not be told anything. So be honest about what is the potential impact, and you'll get a lot more credibility as well. And then empowering others. So listen to feedback, remove obstacles. So and the video was a good example. There was too many obstacles to climb the hill. So get the dozer and knock the obstacles out of the way. Engage with your leaders and managers so that they can support you, knock over the obstacles that you may not be able to address yourself. So it's about getting that engagement upwards in the organisation as well. Creating short-term wins, which we went through, consolidating the improvement. So with each celebration, it actually increases the momentum of the change. Review progress, so continually review, go back, challenge, have we progressed where we need to be. Institutionalise the change, remeasure, and then don't stop. So I've got that there. So I'll just open up now if there's any conversation, any thoughts, any challenge that you want to provide me in that model, or anything that was spoken about today. Yes, Emma.
Just like looking at this, and also the change models type of stuff, it's all kind of geared towards this being a very clean process where someone's done step one and identified the need for change, and that might be an individual and you get to follow through to the end, or it might be an organisation and they say, hey Steve, we'd like you to come and manage this.
Yep.
But in reality, I feel like quite often it's not that clear.
No, it's not.
Clean,
Yep.
right? So it might be, step 1 to 4 sits with one person, and then that's not really their job anymore, so it goes over here, or identifying the need is one person's job, but then it's someone else's job to fix it, and that kind of, I just be interested in how this works in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So this is tailored around somebody who is accountable for leading the change. But you're right, there are elements where there might be members of your team that are accountable for delivering part of it. And I'll share with you a very recent change process I'm working on now, which is really around fundamentally changing how a part of the corporate business operates with the divisions. And we've set up one of the things that I first did when I started with it was with ARTC, right? So one of the first things I did when I started there was to look at how well progressed are we in terms of engagement with the business units, because it's about if the business units that we're working with aren't fully engaged, doesn't matter how good the idea is, it's just not going to be implemented. And we took the conscious decision to knowingly that we're going to delay implementation because we're going to go back a step and make sure business units are adequately engaged. We've got the right people within the teams. We've we've got the right expertise and skills, and we're actually adapting the plan to incorporate so it can be implemented. So although this sounds like it's, you know, you go step 1, step 2, step 3, sometimes you might get to step 4 and go, well, hang on, I've got to go back. And sometimes you might get your boss, your CFO or whoever saying, I want these dollar savings delivered now. You know, we're nearly at the end of the financial year, and the plan was to have these implemented for the start of the next year. So let's hurry up. So you have to actually be strong enough as well to say, well, no, I'm not going to hurry up. I'm going to actually run this process properly and implement the change. Because there is a lot of tendency to say, yeah, right, good, I'll go in and I'll hurry up and I'll do it. But you only implement part of the change, not all of it, and you won't get the long-term value and benefit of the change. So you'll get a relief from short-term pressure from the boss, but long-term when they look and go, well, actually Holly, he didn't actually implement that properly at all. It's fallen apart. We won't get him to do anything for us again. So it's about doing it properly, right? So you're right. It does sound real easy on paper, like anything. It's like when we go and play sport, you know, on the weekend, we have coach, you know, has a game plan. We're going to get the ball here, we're going to pass it there, and Bill's going to get it and he's going to score. Right? But how many times you get confronted with so many opposition might be different. They might have a better plan. You know, all these different dynamics that you know that you actually can't physically control.
And the other, which is kind of related to that, you know, the reviewing the progress and actually checking that the implementation is working. This is more, I guess, a personal question. When you're engaged to undertake change management for an organisation, does that tend to feature, or is that kind of part? Maybe you've moved on and it doesn't necessarily happen, or because changes, or you know, particularly significant changes, can have some big flow-on impacts that, you know, you miss one and it's a really significant impact on the business overall. I'm just interested in that aspect of it too.
In whether it's
feedback loop, like actually seeing how whether it's been effectively implemented, and how, I guess, those items that maybe weren't captured when the management aspect of it, not the leadership aspect, where maybe you didn't, I'm just trying to think of a practical example. I'm an environmental person, maybe you didn't think that this change in the recipe of this product would affect the wastewater.
Yep.
And then we've got a big
You got an impact.
issue,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, something like that, and then that's going to have to review some significant aspects of your program and that kind of continual feedback loop.
Yep.
So just wondering, when you come in as a change manager, how much of that tends to happen, or do you come in and go, here we go, here's the program, done, and walk away?
Yeah, well, never do you come in and it's done and then walk away. So to me, it's a lot of it is about, this is more of a question for me about how I approach things, right? So
Well, this is more about the role as a contractor consultant.
Yeah.
Change management.
Yeah, so the way I approach it is to really get an understanding of the business. So, and I'll work with the leaders within the business, as well as the teams within the business, to understand where they're at, what their actual needs are, and where they need to get to. And it's about understanding the risk. So you do a risk assessment of the potential impacts to the change, so you can understand, you know, that there is potentially going to be an offshoot impact, and then you either make an adjustment to your plan, or you accept that that's going to be an impact, and you keep moving forward. Well, we'll keep moving forward. Oh, hang on, I'll go back. We've got some case studies. We might start sharing the stories and a bit of information, so we can finish the session for this afternoon. So everyone ready? So what I'll do is I'll start by giving an overview of the two case of the case studies. So I'll start with case study 1, and this one here. So the story here is really because there's two different case studies across the group. So we'll give everybody a bit of context. So the story here, this is an organisation. So it was a Melbourne-based electrical contracting company that partnered with a private equity firm, and they embarked on, acquiring similar sized electrical contracting organisations across the country. So there was about 5 or 6 that were acquired. They established a national presence, had a revenue, 350 to 400 million, a year, about 600 employees in total. And what I learn about private equity firms is that they actually go in, they go around the world, get investors to invest, a fair amount of cash, and the investors, know that it's high risk. They want high returns, and they want it quick. So typically they embark on this investment for about a three-year term, 5 tops. In this case, the private equity firm had been there already for 7 years. The idea was the 5 or 6 businesses bolted together. They'd put a corporate governance framework in place. They'd take it to IPO, so they'd list it on the stock exchange, and everyone would make lots of money. So market dynamics changed. They weren't able to take it to IPO, so the first IPO attempt failed, and there was significant challenges within the organisation. So the previous owners, who had access to plenty of cash because they obviously had their businesses bought out, they made the mistake of keeping the business owners on as general managers for up to 3 years. So the changes that were meant to be implemented weren't implemented. They actually had a lot of financial challenges with revenue that was taken up that wasn't real, and they also had challenges around the previous owners were cannibalising the market. So they were actually setting up businesses to compete. So the challenge here, the case study here, the change journey here is, how do you go into that business and transform it so that it does become corporatised, that they do become focused on, delivering things nationally, and how do you bring a team along that journey that has sort of been part of the previous organisation and the previous culture for a long period of time. Anyone want to be spokesperson for the table?
Okay, sure, I'll jump in. Similar sort of conversation really, I think. Communicating a sense of the crisis, I think, would be critical right at the beginning, that we can't go on like this. Make sure that everybody understands the financial position of the business. That's really, really important. I came from Lehman Brothers. I didn't do it, but it was one of those companies that no one ever thought could fail. It was incredible. So you've got to make sure they understand that. And then the forming the powerful guiding coalition thing is where the next generation of management comes in. And I think this is where we sort of have a chat around the fact that the previous owners and entrepreneurs were creating issues with the company and that they've gone out and formed their own. That actually creates an opportunity too, because the guiding vision to turn this around, I think, as well. Okay, that all goes. The younger generation of management can come up, create a new business under a new vision, one operating model that's unshackled to that, and it could be what you guys and girls want to make it. And that's how you turn that into a positive, I think.
Yep.
And so if you got everybody on board with that, and then empowered them to like, right, you were second or third tier, now in charge. Let's go for it. Then you're not shackled to that previous vision.
Yep. No, that's a great point, mate. Great point. And I think in the real life example that decision was taken too late. So the outcome of this business really, just to cut straight to the chase, it actually went into voluntary administration. So a couple of the dynamics around it was the Queensland part of the business had just before the earn-out period, which is the bit where the previous owners get the last and sometimes the largest chunk of their payment. So just before that happened, the guy running that part of the business won a couple of work, two major jobs, one valued at 30 million, the other valued at 50 million, that were priced under cost. So there's significant, losses being made in the Queensland business unit. The New South Wales business unit that I was running had, WIP, work in progress, which is, work completed, revenue taken up but not yet invoiced. So it had about 10 million bucks worth of WIP that wasn't real. So there was just revenue there, and that was about, again, creating that ability to get full earn out. So there was some significant financial challenges. The previous owners were very successful in setting up new companies, taking current customers into their new company and recruiting their old team back, that they were part of this business. So the thing that didn't happen quick enough is the change of the management team. So a lesson, for me personally out of that was that if you're going in and embarking on something like this, it's almost, it might sound really ruthless, but it's almost you just go in and you just, sack the top guy and potentially one or all of their leadership team and start a new team from day one. And that eliminates that risk, and you then can build and establish a new team and go forward. Unfortunately, in this case, there was 600 people that lost jobs, and a lot of them lost entitlements. So that was that one. The next one is case study 2. So case study 2 was a major rail operator that had a challenge where they had part of their maintenance was being completed internally, part of it was being externally. The part that was being completed, by contractors was, proven to be cost prohibitive in its current form, but there was a significant, cost impost, to get out of that contract. So the value that was required to get out of the contract wasn't worth paying. So they had to come up with another way of actually reducing that cost. The part of the reason for the change was that there was increasing market competition, so competition was being introduced to the market, and they needed to reduce costs so they could maintain market share. Decision was made to dangle the carrot to the contractor of the remaining assets, that they would maintain them if they were able to get out of the cost prohibitive contract. So that decision was made. As a result, there was a team of about 100 that people that would lose their roles because the work would no longer be done internally, and there was a transition from internal. Any other questions? So I'm happy to call that a close, and I'm getting nods over there going, well, you've gone way over time. So let me just apologise sincerely for going over time, but I personally found the session to be valuable, and I very much appreciated your interaction and involvement, and I hope you sort of leave here this afternoon taking some hopefully some good lessons and some things that I've shared are of value. So thanks very much for your time.